Giancarlo Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Left right field towards the corner. Gone!
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio. SVP and Russillo, the podcast.
Hey, what's up? Russillo back with Danny Cannell. Do you believe in the Spurs or the Warriors and the Heat not in the playoffs? Tim Legler on those topics as well. Urban Meyer gets a raise, but is he actually still underpaid? Tim Kirkchen on the first week of baseball and reacting to Jaw's thoughts about the Buccaneers' decision with the number one pick, quarterback, 5 NBA questions, and nonsense at the end of the show. I'm fired up to be back. We'll talk a lot of NBA today. That's probably where we're going to start with some NFL draft stuff as well. And maybe a little story time. So George Whitfield's going to be in studio. You know what I do want to ask George about? Look, I mean, he knew Manziel or knows him very well. How's that working out? And also, you work with Jameis. You hear people talk about character and all these different things. How does that make you feel knowing someone as well as you do? But we start in the NBA. And in the Western Conference standings, which are all over the place, we still have New Orleans and Oklahoma City fighting out for the A seed. Everybody's freaking out about where San Antonio is going to end up on their line, depending on the seeds. 4 different options there. But Golden State dominant last night, even though the final score is 111-107 against Memphis. Klay Thompson goes absolutely off. And I feel like I'm in the minority now, though, Danny, by saying I'll take Golden State and you can have whoever else you want.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I would say it was vice versa. Maybe 3 weeks ago, before the Spurs kind of went on this unbelievable run, everybody was on the Golden State bandwagon. And then all of a sudden you had this resurgence by the Spurs late. And all of a sudden, I think it's way more of a toss-up now. And I agree with you. I think more people are even leaning toward the Spurs because of the experience. But, you know, watching the game last night, it was pretty sick. I mean, I'm a tweener, but I'm going to lean towards the Spurs because of that experience. Let me throw some numbers at you. You ready? 21-3 run.
Okay,
since February 27th, okay?
Yeah.
No team in the NBA has a better record. Nobody has a better scoring average. Nobody has a better field goal percentage or free throw percentage. They are the best team in the league throughout this latter portion of the season. Now, granted, Golden State has done it longer, but then you've had the injuries that the Spurs have had to deal with, and Popovich manages those injuries and guys' health better than anyone. I mean, I think it's a big reason why they're able to excel when you've got guys well into their 30s who are still able to produce in the playoffs. And then they've got the mojo, and they've got something dangling out there. You know what that is?
No, you used mojo, and I kind of just stepped back, so I'm not even sure if I'm ready for the next part of it. What else? What else?
They have that carrot dangle. They've never won back-to-backs. They've got another reason to go after it. And they got Kawhi Leonard to shut down Steph Curry.
I just don't think they care about the back-to-back as much as we have from the outside. That used to be Rick Bucher's big thing. Like, they're not that, they've never done it. They've never done it back-to-back. I just can't see Pop and Duncan going, guys, there's one summit left. There's one left. And it's back to something. It's not like anybody's going, they're good, but you know what I mean?
Never done that.
The fact that they bookend Duncan's career this way, I mean, it's just not supposed to happen. I just did an awesome Tommy Lee drumstick flip in the studio. Those that may have seen it on TV.
That was impressive.
Klay Thompson, 26 of his 42. Last night, I get back from New York City, and I'm like, you know what, man, I'm just going to go to bed. And I go, wait a minute, the Warriors are about to tip it off right now. I'm in. And that second quarter, 26 points for Klay Thompson, 42 in the game. And then it was a huge fourth quarter for Memphis to even make the score look respectable after Klay Thompson talking about his offensive night.
Well, the best part to me was, I didn't take probably more than 7 dribbles that first half. And that's just, I came to this game wanting to be really effective moving without the ball and utilize some of the best passing big men in the league, and Bogut and Draymond and everybody. And that's what opened them up for me, early.
The scariest thing is watching them. They just don't care. They were having so much fun. They were trying to get it to Klay in bad spots, and other guys are passing up good shots just to keep that second quarter going.
You know why it's fun? Because everything's done. And when they're going to have to lock it down. I mean, is it going to be
so that
fun?
Does nothing for
First
you.
round? No. I hope they're having fun. They've had an incredible season. There's nothing on the line for them right now. They've already locked up the 1 seed. They're chilling out there. They're getting ready for the playoffs. They're getting ready to make their own run. So, yeah, they should be having fun. They should be trying to get Klay Thompson to beat his own record of 37.25. Why wouldn't you? What else do you want to do?
Because
that
it's an NBA game
resting guys.
Against a Memphis team, granted, no Conley, no Tony Allen, but you're sitting there going, this is almost disrespectful. The way they're playing this now,
and think of it, you play at your best when you're that relaxed. Like that's what I'm concerned about. What happens when they, it's 2-2 after 4 games in a series? How do they respond then when it's all relaxed? How are those shots? Are they still going to go in when there's pressure on the line? That's the
I believe
that remains to be seen.
I am not worried about those guys. I'm just not. Those shots that they make and the cuts and the catch and shoot stuff that they do, I don't know why that's going to be so much easier to defend in the playoffs. And, every Spurs fan is just hitting you up with Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, length. Yeah,
Kawhi's
do it.
Kawhi's terrific, but it doesn't mean you score 0 against him. Now, look, I'll ask you this. Are we incapable of buying into the Warriors because it's just that
they haven't done it?
That old rule, exactly. Is that the reason why you hesitate? Is that why everybody hesitates?
No, I think it's because the Spurs are a really good team. I don't think there's any hesitation. Yeah, I want to see a team do it. I know there's a process of having to overcome adversity, having to be the first. I mean, the first time is always the hardest, right? They've got to get that first championship. If they do that, they're young. The future is unlimited in what the potential of what they could do. But because we've seen the Spurs do it, because we've seen their guys come through in the clutch, they've made big shots, they've got young and old guys on their team that can do it, that's why I'm leaning towards them.
With Danny Cannell today, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Again, at SVP and Russillo, 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. And your Twitter handle is? So people
at Danny Cannell.
There you go. Okay, we're going to do some NBA questions second hour. But what do we do about your Heat?
Yeah, that was another rough one. They're just not very good.
Why aren't they better?
Well, first of all, let me just say, because I was a very realistic Heat fan coming into the season, right? Didn't make a lot of
very
moves.
Grounded.
Very grounded. LeBron's gone. Wasn't as despondent as Cleveland was when he left town. But, they got Dragic at the trade deadline. And then that was probably the hardest. There was a 24-hour stretch there before Chris Bosh got hurt.
Before they found out that he had an illness.
Right. Before he had, before he was shut down, that there was a lot of hope in me. And then as soon as he came out with the lung issue, that was all gone. And even if they would have made the playoffs, I wouldn't have. Although I did hear Tracy McGrady say at the end of the night because Michael Beasley got hot.
That was at halftime of the Bulls game.
Yeah,
before the Heat had the disastrous reverse third quarter.
Yeah, 33-7 in that third quarter. That was pretty ugly.
But McGrady was going, they're going to make some noise.
He thought if they had the 8th seed, they could have done something against the Hawks. I don't know what do something means, but he said they could have shaken things up. But I would have had zero confidence in that. Like, I would not have been delusional about the Heat's prospects. I almost feel better about them. I'd rather see somebody who's younger and hungrier than Dwayne Wade, who's out partying with Chris Bosh the other day.
Are you questioning?
I was kind of bitter.
Dwayne Wade's
I was
hungriness?
bitter about his Instagram post the other day.
Which
he had
one?
a picture with Gabby Union in the back of their ride, and they were on the way to the Bosh birthday bash, and he put hashtag can't lose when I'm winning. Just kind of irked me a little bit.
Why? Why did it irk you?
Because I want to see guys. First of all, I think there is too much of a glimpse inside behind the curtain, and I want to see guys who care, who say, you know what? I know they're not supposed to. They're going to live their lives.
You want to know that he's about that grind.
Yeah, exactly. Which he did with LeBron last year. They should show him after in the ice tub. Hey, we're boys doing work. Don't see that anymore.
Amazing how that works, huh?
What?
Oh, LeBron's gone and
all of a sudden,
no playoffs.
Hey, that was my expectation.
See, no way.
But I'm a even-keeled Heat fan. I'm not crazy Heat fan who's tweeting out photos of the trophy.
I'm just telling you, this Heat team, as disappointing as the Bosh thing is, you got 44 games from him. You got an all-star center, essentially Whiteside, dumped in your laps for about half the season. You get Dragic to the trade deadline. Wade, he'll miss his 20 games, but he's still been efficient in those. That team should still be the 8th seed, at least the 8th seed in the East with the other teams you're competing with. I think they're as big a disappointment as any team in the NBA, even with this roster and the problems they've had.
I think the Thunder have been more disappointing.
All right,
because of the expectations coming up.
Okay.
SVP and Russillo.
Okay, Legs. Last night I get home and I'm going, you know what? I'm done with the regular season. We all want to know what happens with the Pelicans, the Thunder, the Spurs seeding, very important. And then I watch that Golden State Warriors second quarter where Klay Thompson goes for 26, and they were up so big on Memphis. It's like they didn't even care about the game. They just wanted to see what they could get out of Klay. What's that like? Have you ever been in a game like that? And the Warriors have had a lot this year where you're not even thinking about the opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. You've definitely, you get times where you're fortunate enough to be in that position. I completely agree with you about Golden State. I was actually dying laughing at halftime because here is this guy. He's got 37 points, 26 in the second quarter, and I'm going, They're up 30, and I'm like, what are they going to do here? So they came out of the locker room, and he took like 5 shots in a minute. Like I think they were trying to see like, how ridiculous can this get?
Watching them, right? I just start dying laughing on the couch watching them play basketball.
It's absurd. And then, he goes 1 for 5 to start the third quarter, and they're like, all right, you know what, shut it down. I think they wanted to see if he could get like 70 by the end of the third and do something special tonight. Then they're like, all right, you know what, you're done. And then they go about the business just, going through the last 20 minutes of that game, going through the motions, get the win, and move on. But I agree with you. I said coming in before we went on the air, I can't – just give me Wednesday bedtime because I know who's playing who when I wake up the next day, and I can really start talking about the matchups in the series and not these hypotheticals about teams that have been so inconsistent, particularly at the bottom of the East, that I have no way of predicting what is going to happen. I think now, though, I'm kind of pulling for Indiana almost. They've played well. Paul George is back. If you win 2 games, you're in. It's in your control. Let's see if they can get it done.
When you say you're pulling for them, that's just to see them play. You don't think they can do any damage.
No, of course not. Yeah. No, I just think it's kind of an interesting dynamic. If he is back and they win 6 straight games going into the playoffs, and they don't have to play LeBron James like they have the last couple of years, that group. They get Atlanta instead. And even though they're a very good team, and I would expect Atlanta to win the series, you got to tell me Indiana's going to be sweating playing the Hawks with Paul George back, having won 6 straight, going in with the same core that is used to winning playoff games. That team went to conference finals a couple times. That would be a very interesting element to add to all of this. I think much more so than if that's Miami or Brooklyn playing the Atlanta Hawks. I think Indiana, in fact, they went 7 games last year in the first round. That adds a little drama to the Eastern Conference at least.
I know they've had some issues, but I think as embarrassing as anything is that the Heat not making the playoffs this year. I mean, how do they not make the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is obviously Bosh going down is huge. Whiteside really wasn't a factor for this team for the second half of the year. They make a major change in getting Dragic. He hasn't always looked super comfortable. It takes time for a point guard to really do that. Wade was very inconsistent and banged up the first half of the year. So there are things to point to. I definitely thought at one point before Bosh went down, I'm like, yeah, not only are they going to make the playoffs, they're kind of scary a little bit. I actually love their starting 5. And if they don't make the playoffs, I don't think it's like the end of the world to the Miami Heat because they're going to say, all right, look what we have going forward now. We have Dragic, if you can resign him and keep him long term. And now we have Whiteside, who's one of those productive centers in the league. Dwayne Wade, who has looked pretty good the last month. Your future, all of a sudden, next year, you go in and say, hey, you know what? We might be able to make a run at this next year if you don't make the playoffs this year. And so that's how I look at Miami.
That's what drives me nuts, though, because that's the way I think they feel, too. I think they're like, you know what? The season's a wash. We'll get healthy. We'll rest Wade an extra series, and we'll get it back. That drives me nuts.
I just think that a team that has won championships, been to the finals, they're going to look at this a little bit differently. You look out west, for instance. If Oklahoma City doesn't make the playoffs, is it the end of the world? No, because you lost the MVP for the whole year. Westbrook missed a month at the start. They had a massive overhaul of their roster, right, in February. So they're looking at it like, get Durant back. We're good next year. We're right back where we were. Right, but for New Orleans, it's like you kind of need to make the playoffs. I mean, you really do because those guys need to taste that. You have young players, a young star. You need to see what that's all about, even though they're going to get blasted by Golden State if they get in. It doesn't matter. They need to keep making those steps forward. For Oklahoma City, it's like, look what we went through this year. And if we get everybody back, Ibaka, Durant, and the guys we added, next year we could win the whole thing. And that's why they're going to look at it a little bit differently. Miami as well. Some of these other teams, it's different for them.
See, the thing about Miami, though, we're talking about a team that's 36-45. So you still had half a season from Bosh. Wade misses 20. You still get the half.
Stop trying to just bash them.
Well, look,
here
are the Celtics' top 5 scorers since the All-Star break. This is the team you trail in the standings. Isaiah Thomas, Avery Bradley, Brandon Bass, Jay Crowder, and Tyler Zeller. That group is ahead of you in the standings. So I'm not talking about the Heat being this disappointment as far as there were some bumps in the road, but the combination of all the things we've talked about, that should still be good enough to be the 7th or 8th seed in the East, which is terrible.
I agree.
That's all.
I'm surprised that they're not going to be in, and they're not going to be in. They're hanging by a thread right now. It's going to probably end tonight. So I am surprised by it, but I also think I look at it more like bigger picture, the vision of this team and what they have and moving forward. It's not like this is it, the run's over. They're actually going to be better next year. So not every team can say that.
Who's a scarier opponent in the playoffs? The Warriors, the year they've had, or the Spurs with the run they've been on?
Gosh, I mean, Golden State can be unguardable. We've seen it, right? They can just be unstoppable. The absolute last team you're going to want to end up seeing in a year that they've had you win 67 games potentially is San Antonio. At one point 2 months ago, you're looking at the Spurs and you're going, all right, I know they're going to make a run, but to go from 7-2 in like 6 weeks, which is what they're going to do if they can beat the Pelicans, it's incredible. Now you look up and you say the only team that I have faith in that could beat Golden State, and I'm not going to make that prediction because that series is 6 weeks from now, and I'll see how they're playing at that time. But San Antonio is the only team that can. I don't think any other team can deal with the Golden State Warriors.
Are you ready to say that the Spurs? I mean, I know that's tough, but
it's too far off. I want to see how Golden State looks in their first 2 rounds, and who they play, and all of those things. There's no need to have to predict it. Right now,
you paying attention to what we're doing here?
Yeah, I know. It's too far off to predict that series. I just know that if it's not San Antonio, if for some reason San Antonio gets derailed, or somebody goes down for that team, or they just don't look good for whatever reason, I can't imagine why they've won 11 straight games heading in. Then you say there's no one else. No one else is beating the Golden State Warriors. I think it's just San Antonio, the only team that has a chance to do that. So let's see how it plays out these first 2 rounds.
I want to ask you more of a coaching question here because I think in the NBA we have a hard time with it. Tim Legler in the studio with us on ESPN Radio. Jason Kidd went from with Brooklyn scouts. Other people say this is a joke. This guy's not an NBA coach. And then things kind of steady themselves. And now with Milwaukee this year, they're not a great team. They're a 500 team, but they're ahead of a lot of teams you thought they'd be behind. Is he a good coach now in the NBA?
Here's what I think went on with Jason Kidd, and he needs maybe more of a body of work to really figure this all out. But when he went to Brooklyn, right, rookie coach, they bring in a bunch of veteran guys and go, okay, we should win something this year with a bunch of guys that he was not much older than. And
he played with them for his entire career.
He did, and his interaction with them and his connection to them was almost non-existent. The chemistry was terrible between him and the team. When you add that with the fact that over the first couple months of the season, the guy's learning how to manage games, how to draw up the right thing at the right time, substitution patterns, all of those things. He got better at that as the year went on, but the chemistry between him and the team would have helped him earlier in the year. So he leaves, he bolts, he goes to a team that's much younger, guys that look at Jason Kidd differently, not as a peer, as a guy like Matt really looked up to this guy, when he was a player. And now they're going to listen to you a little bit more, and you can impose your will, and you've got 1 year of coaching under your belt of pressure situations that you learned a lot from. So he took that out there, and now it looks like, maybe he's going to be okay. I love the way they play. They compete, and that's a big part of what a head coach does in this league, get you to be prepared every night to compete. And that team does. So I give him a lot of credit because I certainly wasn't sure 6-8 weeks into his coaching tenure in Brooklyn, can this guy coach at all? And now I'm saying, you know what, maybe he's going to be okay. And I think Milwaukee's been a nice breath of fresh air for all of us.
Thanks, man.
All right.
SVP and Russillo.
We're still 2 weeks away from this thing, and because it's months and months, and it's 2 guys that played against each other in the Rose Bowl, we've been talking about Winston and Mariota, but we'll try to do it a little different way. With Danny Cannell today, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio, as you know, presented by Progressive Insurance, all of our guests on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Urban Meyer has gone 38-3 in 3 seasons and a national championship at Ohio State, and that means he's getting a raise. He was going to make $4.9 million this upcoming season, but that's been bumped up to about $5.8 million. Really, what this contract will pay him an average about $6.5 million over the next 6 years, taking him through 2020. I think he's underpaid.
I agree with you. I do.
Does anyone agree with that?
Well, I mean, we did it with Saban. We had the conversation about Saban. I remember when he's up at $7 million, right?
Yeah.
And
it fluctuates a little bit because of all the compensation. And Saban has a thing where his insurance and his house is paid for, you know what I mean?
It's a lot of money.
Because Calipari at Kentucky, it's supposed to be about $7 million a year, but I think 1 year recently it was $10 million in total compensation. So
yeah,
anyway.
I think when you look at, I think we can all agree that football coaches have the most influence on any sport, right? More so than basketball, as far as X's and O's.
Yes.
Strategy, getting the most out of their players and actually doing stuff on the field, like X's and O's.
I really don't think there's any debate.
No, there's not. And then you add, so you've got that, so that adds value to what he does. And then you look at just what somebody has brought back to a program that, I mean, it wasn't that long ago when they were, they had the stretch when they won the national title and they got good, but then they had some issues, then they were falling apart, and he's brought them right back to where, and they're on the cusp of a dynasty when you look at where they're standing right now. I think he's one of the best motivators. When you listen to him talk, we talked about it with Coach K, like you get, inside access. And because of TV, some of the things we do on there, you hear, you get to, see him talk to his team. And I was in there in August, and got to have dinner with him, with Mac Brown. And sitting there, seeing the way he interacted with his players, really had me buying into what he's doing in Columbus.
So if you look at the money that has come in, and I always wonder, because the reason why all these guys are making so much money and the schools wanted to realign and everybody wanted to figure out their TV deal is that the TV money keeps going beyond anything anybody could expect, whether it's the NBA, the NFL's up, even baseball. I mean, everybody makes fun of baseball, but look at their local ratings in prime time for 6 months, and it's a great product to have, and that's why revenues have gone up so much in baseball, because there really is no replacement for the live sports audience. You don't DVR it. You don't watch it on demand later. You don't watch a knockoff version of it. You watch the World Series. You watch Saturday football. You're not going to sit there and watch Ohio State play Michigan and then watch it 2 days later knowing what happened. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why all of this money is in sports, and it's been going on for a long time. And then you always wonder, well, what's the peak of this? There's a housing peak. There's, I guess you could say, go back to the .com stuff. Eventually, like, it couldn't be worth, all this stuff couldn't be worth that much on paper. So when you look at the coaches' salaries, they're all supposed to go up. But then, of course, you have the next step, which becomes, well, how can the money keep being piled into these sports, specifically to college football and college basketball, and none of the players see any of it?
And I knew that was going to come up, and that's what drives me nuts in this conversation, because they'll be all look at the disparity, and there is. It's a vast difference. But you've also got guys. I mean, look, if you take Urban Meyer off of Ohio State, they're a completely different team. We can agree on that, right?
Yes.
They wouldn't have won the national championship last year. They wouldn't be sitting where they are now.
No, you could argue last year they had a schedule, too.
But to prove the point perfectly, take not one, but two quarterbacks off of their roster, the most important position on the field. A guy who was Big Ten Player of the Year in Braxton Miller, take him off the field, then take the next guy up who's had arguably just as good a year, and you do it with a third guy, and yet here they are still there. I just feel like the coaches are worth that much more to the program. The players are replaceable. They are pawns. Is it fair? No. Are they getting something? I believe they are. I believe they should get more. Like, I don't think they should get
I'm with you. I think you should get
free
more.
market.
But whenever I see Forbes or somebody do these ridiculous calculations of Texas makes this much
yeah,
money,
so
the
each
athletic
player
department,
should be worth $500,000
so
a year.
give the third string guard $80,000.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's stupid.
And it doesn't make sense financially. I don't know how people can actually think that could work. And it bothers me because there are always articles around the Final Four basketball and around the playoff now. And there was just one during the Final Four. It said, the NCAA is going to make $1 billion. The $1 billion business. Yeah, it's $1 billion business. There are a lot of money exchanging hands. But the NCAA, it costs a lot of money to run college athletics, not just basketball, not just football, but the entirety of scholar athletes across the country and programs across the country.
With Danny Cannell today, presented by Progressive Insurance, comparing rates to help you save. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today and find out how much Progressive could save you. I might stop you there, though, because, yes, it costs a lot of money, but let's face it, if you asked NBA people, at least decision makers, on how they were handling their rosters going, you're going to end up making 3 times as much per year with your new television contract. You're going to go from about $900,000 to $2.7 billion. The Oklahoma City wouldn't have traded James Harden. Okay, they would have sucked it up for a year or two more and then gone, we're making so much money, we can overpay to keep what we think is a really good player. They didn't seem to have the foresight to prevent themselves from making a really bad trade in hindsight. But if all of this money can keep going to these universities and all of these facilities and just going up, like, you can't say that, well, it's really, really expensive. Sorry, guys. And I'm not even talking about them being paid a full salary for the entire year. I'm not even sure if we've even heard the right proposals on how to compensate. But in those two sports, there has to be some money for the growth from television to be able to compensate the guys that are part of it.
And it will. I mean, the SEC is already going to it. I think some of the other Power 5 conferences are going to it. I have a problem with them only playing football and basketball players because I've gone to study hall, I've been to the training table, I've seen the hours that other athletes put into it, and I feel like they're work or they're foregoing the opportunity to get a job because they can't. Your time is there, so you have to give it to everybody, and I don't know if it's feasibly possible financially.
I don't think you do. I think you go to the pole vaulter, like, congrats, man. Congrats on being a college pole vaulter, but no one cares. And if I was the pole vaulter, I'd go,
but here's my
no
point.
one cares what I'm doing.
But so go to Braxton Miller or go to Jameis Winston or whoever and say, congrats, you're really good. Now, Jameis Winston is going to get paid. He's going to get paid a lot of money, but no one cares. If he's gone, which he's going to be, people will still go watch Florida State. If you take A.J. McCarron, take him off Alabama, people still went and watched Alabama last year. You can take star players off of the game. People will go back.
Well, look, I completely agree with you on that one because to me the value has always been in the brand. The value is Saturday Night Football in Baton Rouge. You know, the value is anything doing with Texas. There's no singular player. Like Cam Newton meant a lot to Auburn.
Right.
But
those fans are going to come back.
That was a great year, but it's still going to be War Eagle every Saturday afternoon. So I'm with you that the value is not, I think, what people make it out to be, but you can't continue to have the escalation everywhere else except for the two players, at least of those two sports.
But the cost of education has gone up. I mean, degrees are way more expensive now.
Well, that's
way more to go to college.
That can't be sustainable because by the time I have a kid, if I have one that goes to college, it's going to be like $500,000 a year.
Which it probably is. I set up a 529 plan. I think that's what they're trying to hit me up for.
You know, at some point, it's just
right.
There's no way.
But they are
that can
escalating.
Keep going.
But they are. So there is more value in a degree now than there was 10 years ago. There is. See, that's the thing that drives me nuts. There is value in an education. There is a dollar value in that. Right. I know you're not, but I think people diminish that way too often. The other thing I want to clear up, too, is people say the NCAA makes billions. They're paying these coaches. It's not the NCAA who pays the coaches. It's the boosters and the individual schools who pay the coaches all the money.
True, but there's some path of where that money.
And trust me, everybody does. And those schools would probably, if they were allowed, would pay players as much as they could to play.
Right, but when the Big Ten loads up and does their own TV network because they saw it before other people did because they didn't like the way their negotiations were going, they went, let's do it. And, you know, a team like Northwestern gets $20+ million in television money. Like, how psyched are they? All right, so there's a way that guys are getting compensated.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
SVP and Russillo.
No, for real.
Danny Cannell, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio. We were lucky enough to get Kirkshin through the door, and he joins us now as we start the baseball season a weekend. Tim, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm well, fellas. How you doing?
I'm good. Hey, Mookie Betts, is it pretty clear he's the best player in baseball already?
You know, Ryan, I had a scout tell me in spring training he's the best player I saw this spring in the state of Florida. That's how good that kid was. He is a fabulous athlete who was like this three-sport star in high school, and now he's just become a baseball player. He tore it up at the minor leagues last year, did pretty well in the big leagues, and 3 little times called up last year. But this year in spring training and now in the regular season, he's doing some remarkable things. I mean, yesterday, fellas, he took away a home run. Keep in mind, he's a middle infielder who's learning to play center field, and he knows exactly where to run to the spot. He knows where the ball's going to end up. That is so difficult to do for any outfielder, let alone a converted infielder learning to play center field. He takes away a homer. Then he basically steals 2 bases on one play. I've never seen that happen quite like that, where a guy takes off while the shortstop is holding the ball like 2 inches from him because he knew instinctively there's nobody covering third. And then, of course, he pulled his hands inside on a ball in on him and hit a line drive over the monster. That was one of the really great all-around performances you'll see by a baseball player, and he did it all in 3 innings.
Tim, I'm riding this storyline. The Kansas City Royals are the best. They've separated themselves as the best team in baseball.
Well, they have been so far, Danny, that's for sure. So they're the first team in American League history to start a year 7-0 and win each game by more than 2 runs. It's remarkable what they're doing, and it really shouldn't come as a massive surprise because their whole bullpen is back and their whole defense is back, basically. And their defense was sensational last year. I believe they've only made 1 error so far. Their bullpen has been unhittable again. Plus, they're scoring a whole lot more runs than they did at this point, certainly last year. And they are really a lot of fun to watch. They have got the formula here. Get a lead after 6, turn it to the bullpen, and whatever's hit our way, we're going to catch it and throw somebody out.
Tim Kirkchin joining us now on Subway Fresh Take Hotline on ESPN Radio. Tim, the Braves were, and I don't even really like doing this because at any point over the course of a season, a team can go, let's say, 6-1, even a bad one. But they're 6-1, and it looked like they were tanking if you're using NBA terms. How have they been able to put this start so far?
Well, I don't see it, Ryan. I don't know how it's happening, but good for them for figuring this out. They've scored just enough runs. The one thing they didn't really trade away was their young starting pitching. They kept that core. And then in every deal that they made, they acquired pitching in return. And that was critical because 3 years from now, they're going to have a really good team when they move into that new ballpark, and all this young pitching is going to be right at the forefront. But what they've done more than anything is they hired a new hitting coach, Kevin Seitzer, and they told him, look, you got to cut down on our strikeouts. So that's exactly what they've done so far. Now, can they keep this up? I don't know. But all I know is the last few years, when they're not swinging the bats well, you can get the Braves out as a team easier than any team in the major leagues. They were so bad when they weren't swinging the bat properly, and you could pitch to them so easily. Well, maybe those days are over. In getting rid of the Melvin Uptons and others, they are just not that easy to pitch to anymore, and they've just changed the dynamic that instead of being this all-or-nothing team that might hit a homer but might strike out 15 times, we're going to put the ball in play a little bit more often, and Kevin Seitzer, the hitting coach, has demanded that, and so far it has worked.
Tim, last week we hit on it briefly. Ryan and I were talking about John Lester and his issues throwing to first base. And, we assumed, hey, he'll work on it. He'll figure it out. Last night, 2 ugly throws. One was atrocious to first base versus the Reds. How concerned are the Chicago Cubs about his issues?
Well, they should be really concerned because we watched it last night, and he threw the ball over first. You guys saw it. He missed the first baseman by 20 feet. That is really hard to do. It is so in his head. It has to be. Last night was the first time he threw over to first base in 67 starts. Think about that. Well over 300 opportunities where there's been a runner on first base and nobody else, or a second base is open, meaning a potential steal situation, and not once did he throw over until last night, and then we saw why, because he's got the thing now thrown over to first, and they had better get that corrected because, this is not Matt Clement or Mark Wohlers, who was a closer. This is your ace of a team that's supposed to be a contender. And I really feel sorry for John Lester because this is something that he could do when he was 7 years old. He can do it in his sleep, and now he looks over to first and goes, oh, my God, I can't throw over there anymore. It's a real problem, and it's going to get worse until somebody fixes it. But trust me, I've done this story. Fixing something like that is not easy to do.
Tim, final thought. What show do you like going on better, us or Le Batard?
Oh, I like you guys the best, but Le Batard show, that's such a stupid show, and I really enjoy going on there too. You guys are my 2 favorite shows, but I'm putting you guys first because I've been on longer.
But only when Van Pelt's here, though, right?
Yeah, Scott, he makes me laugh like nobody else, and I guess the stupid make Tim laugh thing is going to start next week, which is good because it's just another week where I can feel like I'm 58 years old instead of 12.
We still think you look 12, Tim, if that makes you feel better, all right?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Ryan.
All right, cool. Tim Kirkchin.
SVP and Russillo.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. high-profile college coaches. They don't want their quarterback going to work out with Whitfield. How do you see that whole dynamic and really this kind of QB guru business and where it's headed?
I think he's created an incredible niche for himself and what he's brought to the table and being able to get guys to come out there. I think he does great work with them as far as training them, getting them prepared to play. One of the reasons I asked him about the Kaepernick mechanics question is because I do feel like there is a certain – like I think he brings more value mechanically to younger guys like
George
6,
does.
7. Yes, George Whitfield brings more. And he brings great value to guys like Manziel and Winston as well. But it's basically you're a trainer. You're making sure they're working out. Mentally, you're getting them geared up. You're teaching them how to address pro days. But as far as the mechanics go, because I saw the story about Kaepernick the other day, and I'm thinking, you know what? You really can't change your mechanics. As far as your throwing motion, when you're already locked in, your mechanics are your throwing motion is natural, or at least it should be. And if it's messed up, I'd rather see you work on your mental aspects. Like, look at Bernie Kosar, one of the ugliest motions, Phillip Rivers. You don't have to throw it a certain way as long as you can get it there effectively and quickly within traffic. I'd rather see you working on other things, footwork, speed, mental aspects, rather than trying to change your throwing motion. I think it's a waste of time.
Stanford Steve, how are Danny's mechanics?
He was all right. A little sketchy once he started moving outside the pocket.
See, hand
off the ball.
I would take issue with that. I think I was very underrated on the run.
I think that shoulder flew open way too late, way too easy.
I think I was underrated on the move throwing.
But
no coach ever tried to change my throwing motion. Maybe they should have. But I picked up a football.
Bowden was good?
No, nobody.
Mark Richt?
Only footwork. It was all about footwork, like 3-step drop, 5-step drop, crisper, faster. Jim Fossil, no coach I ever said here, I want to tweak this or that. There was never a hitch. And I felt very blessed. I feel like I was blessed with the ability to throw a football. And some guys are given that ability and it comes easier, and some guys it doesn't.
Do you feel like you've stayed blessed?
I think so, in different ways.
Good.
Yeah.
So, Stanford, are you being tough on our guy here, or are you?
Oh, you asked me a question. I'm answering.
Wow. Hey, would we
Great
all
deep ball thrower?
Great deep ball.
Go.
We were watching.
Throw it up for grabs.
Those weren't on the run though.
What game were we watching though? I think we were watching the Florida State-Florida game.
That was recently, right?
And you threw some dimes down the field. You threw
targets.
it right in the bucket.
Those were the days.
Guys were wide open too.
How do you feel about your mechanics, Stanford Steve?
Love my mechanics.
When we used to play catch in front of the game day set,
Yeah.
strangers would walk by and ask Steve where he played. His mechanics were so crisp.
So you couldn't even hear the ball being caught smooth, just cradles it.
It's like the ball was just shot out of something but was attached to some perfect track that would just go right into your hands. I hated playing catch with them.
How were the pass blocking skills?
Better than the run blocking skills.
That's good. But neither one was a strength. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A minus on the chart.
Earlier when Polian was in here and we were all just talking football and everybody just started naming guys and who qualified for what and what high school dudes are from, I left. I have nothing to offer this conversation.
You were right there with us.
No,
You hung in there.
I hung in for a little while, but you go, you know what, Russillo, get out. Don't be the guy that has no business in this conversation that tries to find a way in. Like, oh, wait a minute, was that guy? And you just say the dude's wrong name. I just went and got an ice water. SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio with Danny Cannell today. Okay, earlier today on SportsCenter, Ron Jaworski, as everybody's getting geared up, draft 2 weeks away, everybody's got their opinions. Who should go number one? Jaws, a different take.
Quarterbacks that get beat up don't last very long. You look at the history of David Carr, Tim Couch, Rick Meyer, all those guys, they played behind bad offensive line. And, oh, by the way, the Buccaneers have a bad offensive line. When I look at Winston, he's not the most mobile, quick-twitch guy, the ability to get outside the pocket. Mariota is a very good runner. The mobility is important at that position. It's become more important. So I'm going to stay with my pick of Marcus Mariota being the number one choice of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on April 30th.
The issue I take with that is the offensive line issue and saying that, quarterbacks don't get banged up. I mean, Troy Aikman was on a 1-15 team. I'd say he got banged around pretty good when he was on the Dallas Cowboys early. Peyton Manning, they were not very good when he arrived in Indianapolis. So I think that shouldn't be a reason not to take somebody because your offensive line is not good. You should be worried about your second pick, your third-round pick on how to build up that offensive line and make a quarterback better. Because no matter who it is, even if it's Marcus Mariota, just because he can run, it might be running for his life a little bit better. It doesn't mean he's going to be a better quarterback. So I disagree with Jaws in that sense where they have an offensive line issue. It's not a who are you going to pick a quarterback issue. They need to figure out the offensive line issue as well as who is the best quarterback that we need, not because of what they bring to the table, but who is the best quarterback that's going to fit in the NFL.
You're hoping you're making a 10-year commitment to this player.
Yeah.
So if you can't fix your offensive line along the way, then that's a bigger issue for you in a front office. And if it's a 5-year commitment, that means something probably went wrong with the guy. So I get what Jaws is saying, but if you evaluate the two quarterbacks and you think Winston is the better player, but then you were going to go ahead and take Mariota because of your offensive line, then you shouldn't be in that business of picking players. I don't know how anybody would ever do that runs an NFL team. Go, you know what, we really like Winston better, but the escapability of Mariota sets himself up better, so we'll take the lesser of the quarterbacks, number one.
I would rather you say, you know what, they're both really good. We just think Mariota's a little bit better. Like his touchdown, he takes care of the football better. You could give a lot of other reasons besides the offensive line, and I would buy it. And I think it is really close. Like I've said, Winston, but it's not like a slam dunk. It's not like, it's an easy one. It's really tough decision, and I do not envy the Bucs or whoever's picking 2 or whoever has to pick these guys who it would be number 1 because it is a really tight race. And what's compelling about it is that there are sort of these differences. Do you want the guy who has the upside potential but zero character, the guy that's looked flawless, great character but hasn't done it?
What do you mean zero character? Which one are we talking about?
Zero character issues.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like super boring guy.
No.
I didn't know what you were saying.
Stayed out of trouble.
Wanted to clean that up a little bit.
SVP and Russillo.
Mayo's the best condiment.
5 NBA questions. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Here we go. First one.
Who are you more disappointed in, Oklahoma City or Miami?
It's so easy. I mean, we just had it out with Legs about it. I think it's really an easy. For me, it's Oklahoma City because of the expectations they had coming into the season. Miami's expectations went right out the door with LeBron back to Cleveland. Nobody was expecting them to do much. You had a lot of people that were picking Oklahoma City in the West, thinking they could contend. Now they're barely on the cusp of the playoffs. Do they get in or do they not? I know it's injuries. Both teams have injuries, but I think for Oklahoma City, they felt closer. It was more heartbreaking. It was a tougher year for them.
You could go 38-44 and get the 8th seed in the East this year, and Miami's probably not going to get it.
But they wouldn't have done anything with it anyway.
I know what you're saying, expectations.
Yeah.
But when you look
it's
at
not much of a heart,
as bad as it's been for Oklahoma City, it's 44-37 in that Western Conference, and they're basically 500 against the West, so they beat up on the East. But to be maybe 8 games over when this whole thing's over with all those injuries, I don't know, man. I can't do the Heat thing anymore. My 3rd time today. All right, here we go.
This year's biggest surprise is...
I'll go first. David Black keeping his job and the Cavs being the favorites coming out of the East. Because when it was bad and they were a game under 500 and LeBron gone
Who's
for a
running the
couple weeks,
team?
Right. I don't really know how it got fixed this quickly, but I didn't think he was going to make it through February.
Yeah.
And here they are.
I never doubted him. I'm
I know.
A fan. I thought they'd be fine.
What,
There's
LeBron?
always a lot of panic.
No, I'm not talking about LeBron.
No,
I'm talking about Black keeping his job.
But I don't think they were ever going to actually. I mean, there were some rumors, though. There was some stuff flying around about that he was going to lose it. I'm going to go with the Celtics and the turnaround season they've had. They're in the playoffs now, and especially Brad Stevens. I think he's a surprise of the season for me. He comes out of college. The college game looks like a schoolboy with the roster that they've had. You mentioned it with Legs. Some of the guys they've got, Isaiah Thomas. Kelly Olynyk coming off the bench.
You're having a hard time coming up with a second guy.
No, exactly. That's the whole point.
I'm not calling you out.
No, but I think it's really impressive what he's done specifically with the Celtics.
I could argue the Celtics are a disappointing storyline this season.
Really?
They tried to tank, and it was 7 seed. We could play the Cavs. Granted, if you're not in the top 5 or 6.
I don't see Boston as a tanking town. They wouldn't receive that well.
Dude, I appreciate that.
The Warriors' Stephen Curry will be...
I'm going to say he will be the greatest shooter in NBA history without question. You already feel like he is the best you've ever seen.
Yes.
I think he's only going to get better. I think the more success he has in the playoffs.
His misses touch everything and then kind of gently roll out.
He won't hit the rim anymore, okay? I think he's only going to solidify that role. He's already got the single-season record twice. He's broken his own record. I think he'll be, without question, the best shooter we've seen in our lifetime.
I'm going to say Steph Curry will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer and probably the president.
Which team is best set up to have a big season next year?
I'm not going Heat. I'm definitely not going that. I'm going with the Chicago Bulls.
Dwayne Wade's offseason workout, though, how ready he's going to be next year.
Yeah, he'll be ready. Rejuvenated. He'll have some new
Never
blood
felt
in that knee.
better.
I'm going with the Bulls. I'm going with them. And I know I'm out with Derrick Rose. I don't think he has to return to the MVP form we saw. I just think he has to stay healthy for an entire year. You look at their season, was derailed. Jimmy Butler missed a ton of time. Joakim Noah's been hampered as well, but I think they've got a core nucleus. Once they get used to playing with each other with Pau Gasol, I think this team, now the question mark is what happens to the coach with Thibodeau, what happens to him. Regardless, I think this team is set up to make a nice run next year.
I'm going to go Utah Jazz.
Ooh.
Look, man, I mean, Hayward's been the guy. Favors has finally gotten there. Gobert has been as big a surprise as any single player this season because he went from awkward, whoa, okay, yeah, he moves around a little bit, to maybe the best rim protector in the league today. Alec Burks, their two-guard, was hurt after a few games this year. Trey Burke's a backup. But all I'm telling you is that they missed that two-guard production. So I think, big picture, Utah, I'm not telling you they're going to crack much more than the 7th or 8th, but I think you're going to start seeing some of these other teams maybe fade out a little bit. Final one.
I am selling all of my stock in
the Hawks. I know they're everybody's underrated team. Nobody's talking about them in the playoffs. It's all about the Cavs in the East, but I think you've got to sell high. I don't think it gets much higher with this. Yes, they've had an incredible year, but I think what we've seen and what we'll see in the playoffs is that you need a star player. You need an alpha dog to come in there. I like their system of play. They've brought this West Coast style to the East Coast, but I don't think it's good enough to get it done, so I would sell it now while you can.
Dallas Mavericks. This will be the last year.
I almost went with them.
I mean, Dirk, can he keep doing it? The Rondo thing's a mess. I mean, unless they luck out, but they're a year away from probably being able to use massive cap space. I think there's teams that are going to overpay for guys this year. So I just think this Dallas run this will be the final piece of it.
Yeah, but you're kind of selling it low.
Yeah, you're right.
Stock is not exactly hot.
Right.
I'm getting more for mine.
Everybody loves the Hawks.
Mine could keep going. It could split.
Could it?
But
you just said no one's talking about it. What music was that, Outsider? You get a sandwich going right now. You want me to check in with you a little bit later? You know what? That's fine. We don't need time.
That's all right. Never Scared, the instrumental version.
Okay. So that's kind of that weird stuff that we have, right, for beds.
Can we do EDM on Friday for Outsider?
Is that a drug? I'm going to say no.
Because what is it? Is the Bad Music Friday still around?
That's when I'm not here.
Oh.
We can do EDM Friday. I don't care. You don't have to ask my permission.
I thought we got a positive response. I was surprised we didn't bring it back.
See?
I thought you didn't like EDM because of the traps.
No. You're thinking drum and bass.
Oh. My mistake. My mistake. Okay. Well, good. All right. You want to do that on Friday?
Let's do it.
But you want to have Chesney in, too, though.
I bet he's down with EDM. That might be a new sample he's coming out with on his next CD.
They're all kind of one big wife
has,
swap of music lately.
Country has turned. You got a bunch of wannabe rappers out there now.
True. I would like to do this game with
Who were the guys we saw?
We saw
party
Florida Georgia line.
Hey, they're from Tallahassee. Watch out now. Those guys are good.
You can have them.
That's messed up.
San Francisco, not a fan. You weren't there for the late night that we were at. They were pretty friendly.
Where was this? What party was this? What
Super Week?
Super Week.
Arizona. Nice.
Yeah, a lot of late night activities. Good stuff.
Not as good a time as we had in Dallas, though. Fort Worth, it was.
I don't think it did. Good. I don't know. Did that ever get? I just remember being a van for a long time.
That was a late night for me. That was a crazy night for me.
So crazy.
Stanford Steve's boys from Stanford getting after it.
Yeah, look, old guys to get away from the wife and kids every now and then, turn back the clock. Okay. We're still talking about stuff that almost no one knows what we're talking about, so that's bad. All right, coming up next, Tim Kirkshin. Is Mookie Betts the best player in baseball? Let's do that a little bit later. That's probably a stupid tease. Because you know what somebody's going to do? They're in the car. They're going, probably not. It's only been a week. Can we do this game? Let's do this game. Stanford Steve, you want to have Chesney on the show Friday.
I would love to.
I did not even know he was offered up. Stanford Steve at times just decides on his own taste whether or not to book someone. But I have to say that your instincts are usually pretty right with Van Pelt and I. Who else have you passed on that's been famous the last year or so?
Wouldn't they be offended if they're listening right now?
I don't care. The show's as real as it gets.
I can tell you some guys I know he's passed on.
Every member of the women's soccer team
Okay. Kevin James this week.
Kevin James passed.
You passed on him?
I asked you guys about him, though.
You asked Van Pelt and I?
Yeah.
We probably had a football show that day.
See, I could be starstruck. I'd take everybody. I
You
wouldn't
would?
say no. Yeah, I'd be like, I want to meet them. Selfishly. I don't care if it's good radio or not. I just want to meet them.
You just want to meet Kevin James.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool.
So we got no Chesney as of now. To be determined, TBD.
At one time,
See how
wasn't Rick Ross
Canal
supposed to
finishes
come
the
through?
show.
Rick Ross was supposed to be on the show.
Yeah, that was a request for sure, right?
Yeah, Van Pelt wasn't that into it.
Really?
Yeah, he's not down with Freeway Ricky Ross as much as I am, apparently.
SVP and Russillo.
No, but not for real.
This is SVP and Russillo.
Maybach music.
I've got something to say.
I got something to say.
One thing I'll say about that is this.
Say it! Say it!
Before we get to the final thoughts of the show with Danny Cannell here, SVP and Russillo on ESPN Radio, just want to update the heritage here of Mila Kunis, who it seems like, I think a lot of guys really are into her because she seems like she'd put up with a lot of stuff, but it was a movie. So I don't know that she's really that understanding.
She does seem cool, I'll say that.
She does seem cool, but just because she dated a deadbeat in the show doesn't mean that's going to give you a shot. But anyway, outsider, just to update Mila Kunis's heritage, it is.
She is Ukrainian and born there.
And born there.
Yeah.
So you were kind of on it. Not a Croat.
Apologies.
But there you go. Okay. Next two nights, this NBA regular season will be over. I'm pretty excited just because of the playoffs. This is always kind of a grind, these weird results. And we will know who is in the playoffs, that 8th spot in the West. New Orleans is the tiebreaker over Oklahoma City. So if they end up a game behind them, they'd be out. But Anthony Davis said this really wasn't the plan to go about it this way.
We thought we'd be in the playoffs, like a secure spot, but we had injuries and lost some close games. And, we won no other way. We fought through adversity this whole season, and since I've been here in New Orleans. And just another test for us. I think we were able to handle it.
You guys are just talking about when you say it really want to know the way, or you'd probably like to be 5 games up in the 7th spot. or that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I kind of want them to be in and not Oklahoma City.
I'm with you. I said that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your reason for it?
I just think I think they'd put up more fight. I'd rather see a player who's more consistent. Russell Westbrook might get 50 attempts, but
they both
how many are going to go in? They would both get smoked. I would rather see a new face have a chance.
You know what I'd like to see, though, just because it was kind of the Kevin Love thing where I go, hey, you can't get the team in the playoffs once, and they've had a ton of injuries. Drew Holiday's been back, but he's not playing back-to-backs at point guard, and he's missed almost 50 games. But I just like Davis in his 3rd year to just say, I'm in the playoffs. As superficial as that may seem, and if you're a game out, does that mean you're some failure and you're overrated? If you make it into the 8th and lose in that first round, that means you've arrived. It does seem kind of silly, that way of being super judgmental. But look, if that's the game, or those are the rules we're playing by, then I want to see him in it.
I'm with you.
Anything else?
Nope.
That's it?
I did apologize. I was going to apologize to Outsider, but I already did. Where's Mila Kunis?
Mila?
Or Mila.
We're just butchering her name. Probably not going to get her.
Don't worry, Stanford Steve would pass.
Yeah, he would. Would you pass on her, Steve?
Probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Who can we get on the show?
Keep offering.
Of all the stupid questions you guys have asked me, this is the best question you've ever asked me.
Asking all them questions.
Seriously.
Asking all them questions. Why you asking all them questions? Making statements.
How fired up are you for Paul Blart Mall Cop 2?
Pretty pumped up. Can't wait. I wish I could ask him about, what's the plot line going to be, but we can't.
Yep, Steve said no. What questions remain unanswered from the first one?
That was a good cliffhanger at the end. So you were out yesterday. You were doing Olbermann.
Yeah.
Do you listen to the show when you're not on?
Yesterday, not at all. Although, you know what? Props to the guys down in the New York City studios that work on Olbermann. They all have our show up. They're like, yeah, man, we all watch it. They even had the audio on. So
really?
I was actually a little surprised.
Did you pronounce Olbermann right when you were on the show?
I did pronounce Olbermann right.
Good.
I think I did, unless there's an alternate pronunciation I didn't know about.
You heard what happened yesterday, right?
Yeah. Rothenberg
came on the show, Dan. Remember?
You corrected
So
it.
Rothenberg just couldn't say my name, huh?
I thought it was like a New York accent at first. And see, I'm the type where I'm non-confrontational. So I didn't say anything like the first 2 segments. I'm just figuring he'll figure it out.
We don't have a cut of this?
But Stanford Steve is confrontational, so he came in and was like,
okay,
hey,
what happened?
He just came in and corrected him, which was a good thing.
Just wanted to help him out. I don't know he was saying it wrong.
We're alerting my man Dave Rothenberg.
And then what did you call Ryan when you called in for your guest?
Hey, Dan. No, before when you were talking to me. I said, yeah, what's this guy, killing my name all day?
Because you were going to get on Twitter, too.
Yeah. I don't know. The show's been around 6 years, but my name hasn't been on it all the time. So
yeah, only a few years.
Yeah, so, we'll give him a pass on that.
He's a big fan, though.
Clearly. Locked in. Hey, that guy had to do a show till 2 minutes before, so I'm not worried about that. And he's on with Weatherford on the weekends from the Giants, the punter, who seems like a great guy.
Yeah, they do good stuff.
Anybody that's that happy, I'm always a little worried about. Like, are you really this positive all the time?
Or anybody that's cut up, like that low
is.
body percentage. Like he's a little fanatical about it.
Yeah, he's cut.
Like
super cut.
Mix in a pizza every once in a while, will you?
All of our guests on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Outside, you really kind of brought it late today.
It's really what kept me up last night. So people want to send me info, so I'm not up all night trying to figure that out again because I really don't know who's got more money totally.
What are you researching tonight?
No, but just so we set this up, I mean, you initially just jumped in on the show and asked us whether or not we knew who had more money, Batman or Iron Man. And then you researched it.
Oh, I really did that last night. I was really up till like midnight trying to figure that out. I don't understand.
Changing gears. Right, like Danny's been here 2 weeks. Do you think he'll bring anything in for like the crew? Maybe buy lunch one day. Maybe
well, I was thinking about this because I was thinking
this is usually when he just always does his health kick, so he like plays it off like he's not going to get anything.
Steve is such a hustler.
I wanted to have you guys over for dinner, but like I was trying to think of a time to do it, and you're not going to stay after work, Steve. You got to drive like south. You're total opposite direction.
I got to do Levitard now.
See, outsider can't do it.
No, but you could go outsider. You could go over to his house after Levitard.
Dude, it's just like up the street, right?
Yeah,
not that far.
What if just outsider shows up?
It's all or none. All or nothing.
SVP and Russillo. Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio. This season, the Mets have been a tale of two teams. One of the league's best at home and one of the worst on the road.
Towards the corner.
This weekend, they'll be at home at Citi Field facing the Marlins. Will their home field domination continue, or will Giancarlo Stanton lead Miami to a road win? The Mets and Marlins. The pre-games at 3:30 Eastern, followed by the first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8. Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.